The conversation will be largely around the stage you're at now, the growth stage, but you started somewhere, and it would be great to know what inspired that. How did you find the opportunity that you ultimately exploited? Can start with Kamal? Yeah. On Little, maybe speaking on Little? No worries. Yeah, so it would be great to know where Little started. Like, how did you identify the opportunity, and just the beginning?
I think in terms of finding the opportunity, I mean, I will be very honest to tell you, look, there was no specific way to find the opportunity. I was just there hustling, looking for anything that comes on the way. I was under a lot of peer pressure from the family, from the friends, and then I just had to do something. So one day I was just roaming around somewhere. I got a friend who was an IT manager for a bank. His bank was looking for a system, and he said, yeah, there's an opportunity. My bank started looking for around here, but the softwares are very expensive because they were coming from outside the country. And I said, okay, I can do it for you. I think that's how it started. And obviously the journey, like any other founders, went through ups and downs. For first 3-4 years, it was, you know, I mean, like every founders, you go through, you start giving out future truths. For example, you don't have a product, but you demonstrate it as if the product is ready, then go back home and, you know, build it out, and then come back again. And so I think the journey is not something that was different. It was like any other journey. But the thing was that there was a lot of peer pressure that came in from friends and relatives in order to prove ourselves. And my brother was very bright, my sister was very bright. I really wanted to prove something. And now I think my mom is much happier with me than my brother and sister. So I think that's how it was all started.
Really nice. But maybe just follow on now, looking at now the Little on its own. Yeah.
So what happened, so Craft Silicon is a B2B provider. We provided solutions to financial institutions. And Craft Silicon platform, if I do customers of our customers, we exceed more than 150 million customers on our platform. But we don't own these customers. And when we don't own these customers, I mean, you can't really do so many things. I mean, I have bright ideas for these customers, but I can't do that because I don't own them directly. So that's how always had an urge to get into the retail mass market where we start owning the customers. And that's how I formed Little. But before forming Little, I even formed another company which miserably failed. That was, we launched a wallet. And when we launched the wallet, we ended up competing with our existing customers. So it became really messy. So I had to close that down. It was a failure. But nobody knows that. And So, but the urge was really there. So to get into the retail mass market space, I decided to take an approach through something else and start owning the customer. And that was starting as a ride-hailing product. There was a lot of disturbances among the drivers in our country, where drivers were striking against the other ride-hailing apps because of several reasons, and we saw that as an opportunity. We founded the product. Then we also realized that it's very difficult to compete with these bigger players. So you can only compete on two things. One is you can compete with them based on localizing the product with the right local knowledge, because some of these larger companies, when the products are used here, they may not be very fine-tuned, localized to the local market. So that really came in. The other one is you can only compete with the bigger players. You can't compete them on capital, but you can compete them on innovations. So the localized and innovation, I think that really helped Little to scale up. Today when it comes to compete, so we then also created our own niche on Little. We started focusing on corporate ride hailing. And every corporate in this country, I mean, I'm so proud to say that we are the biggest of the big when it comes to corporate ride hailing. But on retail, obviously, we are not there. We feel retail customer is very price sensitive to a certain extent, not a loyal customer. Today, if I throw the discount, you come to me. Somebody else throws the discount, you get in there. So we created that niche. Again, because we are not funded, we had to really count every penny, that every penny we put in must come out with penny plus something. So that was the Little.
Got it. Hilda?
For me, it's been a journey of a lot of figuring out curiosity I started my entrepreneurship journey when I was in Strathmore University. I was very young. I didn't know what I was doing. At the back of school, writing code, programming, software engineering class, only a few women in the class. So decided to take up that challenge and start building, especially around problems that were happening in my community. Seeing what was happening, seeing the challenges, it was very clear that small businesses were suffering. And my background in Coca-Cola gave me a lot of experience. That was my first job, corporate job, and my last. So, really took it very seriously. Trying to understand what are the problems for small businesses, became very passionate about it, and that's how I started my first business, was Atele, which we did it for 3 years, and it got acquired in 2015. And my Pesesha journey basically has been a continuation of that journey. Because as Kamala said, this entrepreneurship bug is, when it's in you, it doesn't get out until you find yourself in Madare or somewhere, where you have to really be treated, because it's a real disease. When you start building and innovating, you just want to solve problems. And I think for me, that has been the journey. With Pesesha, it was, how can we solve this SME problem and create an ecosystem that allows the underserved, that mamamboga, to be included in the financial system. And banks were not doing it. At the time when we started this journey, MFIs were really struggling even to figure out how to credit score these guys. And with the background and the knowledge I had, I said, let me do this. And so, my team and I, of 60 people here in Kenya, we're basically just cut out to build hard things. That's really where we excel. So we built this platform for 7 years. It's now scaled to more than 500,000 SMEs. And now scaling, yes, thank you, scaling across East Africa. We have partners like Safaricom, Pochi la Biashara. We are the lender behind Pochi la Biashara, 700,000 merchants. So we're very excited. The fact that we can see the infrastructure we've built, putting our head down, solving this SME problem, and now banks are using it, telcos are using it, MFIs are using it. They provide the capital. We come in, we're so good at tech, we're so good at scoring, so that's what we do, and that's what we're focused on. So a lot of curiosity, a lot of serendipity, just doing the hard stuff, and so fulfilling so far.
Nice. All right, Kibet.
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of what has inspired me to build and found companies has been really just kind of the simple thought of building something cool with people that I respect and trust. I'm a big fan of just building stuff for the sake of building it, exploring for the sake of exploring. And so about 5 years ago, I was actually in Silicon Valley. I was working for Google, and a few buddies of mine who were Tanzanian, we were all chatting about just building cool technology and what we could build for the next wave of technology, what we could build back home in Tanzania and Kenya. And one thing led to another, and I packed up my stuff and moved from San Francisco to Dar es Salaam and co-founded Ramani with them. And we were able to grow it from being 3 guys in a living room to a company with over 100 people. But at the end of the day, really that core belief of just building something cool for the sake of doing it was really my core inspiration. Which I know the investors say you're supposed to start with the problem first and then not the technology, but sometimes that inspiration of just a new technology, a new feature, and learning how to build with that and just letting and kind of following your heart in that building process is kind of what inspires me, at least, and that's something I definitely encourage other founders to do, is also just follow your passion, follow your heart in terms of what you want to build and where you want to go, instead of necessarily where the market is taking you. So for me, my entrepreneurship journey just started with trying to build cool stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's talk about maybe the most interesting thing about this panel is, I think it's by design, I believe, Ashley, but you guys represent like the spectrum of fundraising strategies from Kamal, who went bootstrapped all the way, to Kibet, who YC-backed company, just did a Series A investment recently, and Hilda, I feel like you're somewhere in between. So I'd love to know what informed that strategy, and has that, how you viewed fundraising evolved over time? We can start with Kamal.
So my experience in raising the fund is very low, very, very little. And I tried to raise that at some point. It became very difficult, every time doing presentations and meeting, became very difficult. And I felt that I think that's just, I think I'm too techie guy, I'm too techie. So it was becoming very difficult for me to go out and meet, like socialize. I cannot socialize. I went out to take a coffee over there, then I looked around and just came back on my seat there. So I can't socialize. So I think that was one of the reasons, but otherwise if I was a more social guy, I would have definitely worked with a good VC and then scaled up company and made us $1 billion company in a much shorter time. Today, I mean, I think, if you go by the multiples by the VCs and the investors, we might be a unicorn based on the revenues that we are generating among our group. But yeah, so that is not there, and I would really like to learn that. So the last startup that I have, Blue Beetle, I really want to do it. So if any one of you is willing to give me some advice, willing to do that, I think I'm open to be the student again.
Very cool, Hilda. Yeah, please.
No, for us, the journey started. My first company I also bootstrapped. I think the only money we got was an angel who wrote us a check and disappeared, and we never saw him until we exited. He was very supportive, and actually that was Joe Musheru, the previous CS of ICT. So he really supported us, and a very good friend who's worked with us in that journey and actually saw us until the end of the first journey of my startup. And at the time he was working for Google. He was the Google CEO for Kenya. So it was really just a meeting in iHub. We connected and we had coffee and he invested. Now, for Pesesha, I think, the journey and the first company, it was a lot of bootstrapping. There wasn't investment at the time that we could actually say, there were investors to talk to and go and pitch. But in the Pesesha journey, the story changed. The market had evolved. The ecosystem was much more mature. So there was quite a lot of capital. And especially if you're a second-time founder with a track record, you'll definitely find, there's people who want to back you. But I think for us, the decision I made was we want to find that what I call pain market fit first before we go and raise capital. And I was very, very religious on that. Like, we have to find the pain market fit. What is the pain that our customers are going through, and we fix it before we go raise capital. So our journey in the first 2 years was just angels, local angels. And we raised almost 80% of our capital from local angels. Guys in the market, we are saying there's no angels. They are there, guys. They are there. You just need to be at the right place, possibly in Capital Club. They are there. Just go and ask for their list. Who are the members in Capital Club? And what are they investing in? If they're investing in Capital Club, they should invest in you. Yeah? If they're able to get membership here, they should actually be able to invest in a startup, because membership here is not cheap. So essentially, we went to the right places. We used our network of friends. We managed to raise angel investing. Then the second part of that journey, which was in 2019, just before COVID, and this was also a blessing in disguise, because just before the COVID period, we had started growing and scaling up, a platform of SMEs. We had gotten the regulator approval, and we really needed liquidity. And like his business possibly, we need to raise debt. We not only just need to raise equity, we also need to raise debt. So because of that, then you have to look at supply and demand and ask yourself, okay, if you can be able to validate that your business model works, how are you going to fund these SMEs? and make sure that they are able to come back, because that's the value proposition. So we had to raise debt. So majority of the capital we raised at the time was debt, but also we managed to also raise equity to keep us, in growing, especially in terms of scale. And we raised our first seed round, which took us through COVID period, and it's only until 2022, that's when we raised our pre-series sale of $11 million, which was a combination of debt and equity. And the reason why we did that is because we had already a very strong balance sheet. Our book was growing, we were nearing profitability, so we didn't want to raise too much of debt as well that could potentially kill us down the line. And we also just wanted to balance, our business structure in terms of governance. So we raised just enough to keep us going, and that's what has been taking us through up to now. Scaling, with the number of customers I've mentioned, with the team we have, and of course we have investors who continue to actually inject money. So we don't always have to go and fundraise. Our existing investors are actually coming back and reinvesting in the business, because now, we are profitable. So they're able to take their dividends back to the business and support it as we continue to scale.
Yeah, nice. Kibet?
Yeah, I think what I would say is I think the biggest case for taking investor money is timing. So when you're working on a business and you get that early indication that there's actually something here, timing matters. It's important for you to be able to capitalize on that opportunity really, really fast. Because if you don't, somebody else will. And it's a very fast moving market, especially when you're dealing with technology. Things are changing very rapidly. And so often, I wish we could have maintained 100% ownership of our company, because equity is the most expensive form of financing. But timing really, really matters, and having, a few $1 million under your belt to be able to outcompete and out-hustle and hire people and build and innovate really, really fast, and now allows you to actually bring that vision you have to reality much faster than others. And so I know there's always a push and pull about should I take investor money or should I not? And I think for me, the biggest benefit for raising external funds is being able to move really, really, really fast.
Got it. So let's talk about maintaining your shape as you scale. So you guys, whether it's in your flagship markets and just growing, having that high rate of growth, or whether it's expanding into other countries, how do you place structures that you don't lose on, say, the magic from when you're a really small team to starting to scale and expand? Start with Kibet maybe this time and move this way.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote I heard from somebody where I think somebody was asking a founder, hey, what do you do if your culture at your company, you're growing, you're scaling, and your culture has gone bad? And the answer from the most experienced founder was you have to fire everybody, which is a very extreme answer, but I think it goes to the question of hey, how do you maintain shape, or what I would say is culture, as you grow and scale? At Romani, we scaled from maybe about 10 people to over 100 in less than a year. And one thing I learned is that people problems scale with people, not necessarily with your OpEx. And so 100 people is 100 personalities, 100 different problems, 100 different things to manage. And it's going to shape your culture in a lot of different ways, whether you like it or not. It's like setting a fire. Once you light that fire, it's going to take off in whatever direction you take. And so, to the question of hey, how does your company take shape as you grow? I think the biggest thing is culture. And I think one of the best ways to define culture is, how does an organization make decisions? How do they make business decisions? So if you look at somewhere like Google, how do they make decisions? Well, they're very data-driven culture. If you look at somewhere like Apple, they're a much more authoritarian culture in terms of how they make their decisions. And so this idea of how do you shape your organization, I think also boils down to, well, how do you build the decision-making culture within your organization when you're very early and very small? Because once you get, plus 20, 30 employees, it's really out of your hand, even if you're a founder, you know, and so building that culture of decision making and how you guys move as a company very early on is really important.
Okay, Hilda?
No, absolutely. It's 100% about people when you start to scale up a business. And most often, like as founders, we get really entrenched in the mud. We just want to hold the ship, you know, so that it doesn't fall. But as Kibeta said, it gets to a point you're like, you know what, it's beyond me. You know, I think for us as Bezesha, I'm a solo founder. And so you can already imagine as a solo founder, it's even harder to build this culture as you continue to scale up, because you have to look at all the dynamics. You have to, you know, I'm a techie, I'm a software engineer, so, you know, anything about people is also a learning process. And so what we've done is, for me, I've personally had to get, you know, the right people to support me. And we have chief of staff, you know, who works with me very closely to ensure that the culture is spread across all departments. The way we look at the teams, you know, majority of our team members are tech and data. That's where we've heavily invested. And so we have to be very streamlined across all the departments, credit operations and tech and data, and how they work with the rest of the team. So it's gotten to a point where I've just said, you know what, I want to focus on what I'm good at. Let me get other people to help me. My board has also played a very big role. We have a very supportive board that also has experience within their portfolio companies on how to deal with these issues. So I have also made it also part of the job responsibility to help us to think about these things as we continue to scale up. And I think lastly, this is a process. You really can't say that you figure it out even as you scale up. In fact, every other day, I think if you ask me, I wake up to people issues. You know, that's the biggest challenge I face every day. There's always a people issues. You can have, you know, technical issues and many other issues, but those ones you can fix very easily. If you know where to touch the wires, you can fix them. But now people issues are very complicated. You know, as Kibeta said, you know, different personalities. So for us, we decided to not be quick to scale up in new markets, because if you go to Nigeria, you have to figure out the costs in operating in a new market and all that. But given the current situation in the market, we said the best way to optimize is if we can actually scale vertically. And so we've really harnessed the power of scaling vertically, and our processes work, and we've seen it from one partner to another. And so we're asking ourselves, can we continue to double down on that before we actually think about Nigeria or Ghana? Because that's a different culture, different team. How do you understand them? And as a founder, it is your responsibility to go into those markets, not to send an expansion manager. It is you are the expansion manager. So you have to go and figure out the process as the first person, as the first hire. You have to find the right people locally. You have to build the culture. You have to help them to understand the culture you've built in one market to another and contextualize that culture. So it's been a journey, but a lot of work. Culture is getting the village also involved in it, not just the founder.
Nice. Come on.
So I think for us, it has always been getting the right people. I think it has been very, very critical for us. And I think when you get somebody and hold them accountable and give them the responsibility, I think then it really works out well. And it has really worked out well for us. I don't know the exact formula, but look, every time, like, Craft has about 6 or 7 offices. In India, we have 3 offices. Africa, we have 7 other offices in addition to Kenya. And each of these countries have a CEO that runs it. And these CEOs are given full autonomy on how to run it. They have a target. The target given to them is, okay, most of the countries need to be profitable in 8 months. That's a formula. So in 8 months, you need to make it profitable. How you do that? We are here to support you, but let them drive it. And I think that giving them the responsibility, and once you give them the responsibility, you can hold them accountable, has really worked well for us. The HR, the head of talent, is very critical for us. So the head of talent in Craft, head of talent in Little are like people who are sitting right next to me. And I think they do a good job, And if they would not be doing the good job, then it becomes really very difficult for the company to have a very consistent culture.
Nice. So it's people. Great. I think we're over time, and I'm sure there are questions from people in the crowd. So, any questions? Any burning questions?
Hi, good evening. My name is Frederick Masharia, founder and CEO at Vijiji Connect Limited, an ISP in Nairobi County and Kiambu County. My question will more probably be directed at Hilda. In terms of capital raising, what is the right mix in terms of equity and debt? And at what point do you allow the investor to push you to the wall? Because that is a critical factor to consider when you're seeding stake in your organization that you've really built to where it is at that moment.
Any other ones?
Hi, I'm Zisakilu, CEO, founder, Clutch Foundry. Interested to learn what your biggest challenges to adoption were, especially when you were early, and how you navigated those.
We take a third one, and then we answer the three, then we move on to another set.
Hello. I had a quick question for Kamal. You mentioned that for each of your offices you set an 8-month profitability target. Where did you get that figure from, and sort of what's your mental process for building those sorts of targets for your teams?
Can we answer those three first, and then?
Hi, Leslie. So just taking you back to the beginnings, or maybe probably out of context, but could you maybe give a little bit insights on the go-to-market strategies that you employed so that someone like Kamal could achieve the 8-month profitability timeline and things like that?
Great. So I think I'll take the debt to and equity conversation. Yeah. So what is the balance? It's a tough one because I think for us we knew we needed to raise debt when of course we were scaling up. We could not be able to service the lending aspect of our business just with equity. It's not sustainable to take your equity and use it to lend. Yeah, especially as you're growing up. In the early days, you can do that because you're basically trying out the market, you're finding the product market fit. So if you have equity, you can actually say, let me take a bit of equity, test the market, before actually I start raising debt. So for us, once we got the approval from the regulator, that was in 2019, we had the opportunity now to scale up because they opened up the doors for us to validate that we can actually go and partner with banks, partner with other people to raise local capital markets. But there's no bank that could give us money if we were not regulated. That's why we had to go for the regulation. So at that particular time, it was very clear. Institutional money was our way to scale. And so one of the ways we did it was then we were raising the equity to raise debt. So what we were doing is we used our equity as collateral to raise debt locally. So if you look at our balance sheet right now, majority of our debt is actually local because of the equity we raised, the $6 million. So basically, we don't have assets. Let's be honest, most of us, we don't have assets. Most probably Kamal has. But, but I don't have assets because the only assets I have, our office is 2 minutes away from here, is chairs and tables. So a bank is not going to come for that and give us debt. So then we needed to raise equity to be able to raise debt. So you need to find that formula, and we have a very strong finance team, very good chief financial officer. Get people to also advise you on these ratios because it's really important. Because the other mistake you can make is to raise too much debt that kills you, or to raise too much equity that also robs you that control you talked about. So we've just tried to balance it off for us. Our investors, the investors we got were very strategic. So if you look at the last investors that came in, were purely in the MFI space. women want banking and the rest. They have been in that space. So they were not coming in just with the money. They were coming in actually to help us to be able to scale. So find that perfect balance, find the right investors who actually also help you beyond the capital if you are in the fintech space, and they're also going to help you to scale up. I think there was also the question of route to market very quickly. Early stage is usually where you have to pivot. For us, it was a pivotal moment. We actually didn't figure out route to market day one or after year one. Our game has been about pivoting until where we are. So our route to market initially was, we were working with crowdfunding platforms. We reach to SMEs, then we realized very quickly that it was not working. And by the time we were trying to approach these SMEs, we were asking ourselves, where do we find them? So that's how we went to what we call value chain players. So if you look at our model now, it's really evolved from value chain players, people who have networks of merchants and retailers, to now even banks actually bringing the origination to us and the capital as well. So the only thing we have to do is credit scoring and do it so well, because now we have learned a lot. So I think the advice I'm giving you is just be willing to learn, because route to market is most probably not going to be a one-size-fits-all, especially in the fintech space.
Other thoughts on go-to-market? Kamal, Kibet?
We can take go-to-market.
Yeah, in terms of go-to-market, I think I'd really echo what Hilda had stated earlier in terms of the founder or founders leading the process early on. Because a lot of times your go-to-market is just you taking the process that you did to success and then trying to replicate and teach the team to do it. So for example, even at Romani early on, I led sales. And so if you can imagine me in the middle of nowhere, Tanzania, trying to pitch customers, in Swahili by the way, on financial services and trying to figure that out. It was tough, but I did it. And if I can figure out, hey, this was my process to success, then it's much easier for me in an authentic way to teach my sales team and say, hey, this is the strategy you need to take. This is how you need to go to the market, and this is the replicable way to do it. So, I think I really double down on Hilda's point there of, your go-to-market strategy. There's so many different strategies for different types of business, but I think the core thing that you will see in terms of good go-to-market strategies is they were led typically by the founder or founders who then took their own process and just replicated it.
So for us, I think we have been in a pretty good position, and the reason I'm saying in a good position is Craft Silicon is the one funding us. So when we start any company, even when we opened up the Blue Beetle, the last start, the Craft Silicon is the one funding up. And very early we figured it out that banks will not be willing to lend if you are only borrowing on your intellectual property. So we invested in a land and a building. So where Craft Silicon sits in, it's a 4-acre plot with our own place. It's like Google style with all those fancier things inside. So for us, I think that worked out in terms of setting up the 8 months, and that's where even the culture came into the place. I personally I'm a very impatient person. I'm always in a hurry. I even walk faster. I don't walk slow. And I think that from the Founders Day itself, everybody who has joined in has gotten into that culture. So first country that we opened for little especially was Uganda, and it took us about 2 years to become profitable. And then we tried to analyze that this is not something that we can continue, it's not sustainable. So we tried to optimize it. The second country we came in was about 1 year, around 1 year or so, we optimized it. And then now we still felt that it is possible to optimize further. And that's where the 8 months came in. So now onwards, Ethiopia, for example, the last country that we opened in, 8 months it must become. And I think now it's going under 8 is going to be very difficult for a product like Little. And so we figured out that that is where we do it. So different businesses could have different time scale, but for us, that one was the optimal time scale.
My name is Mike Ogego, founder. I really enjoyed the talk. My question is to all of you, having gone
To
through,
all of them?
or whoever has that burning desire to answer the question. Having gone through the pre-seed and seed fundraising and your experiences, what insights would you share to founders who are currently at that stage, and especially with regards to investor relations? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can just call it parting shot, if it's okay.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, it's, I've met a couple of entrepreneurs here who are actually in the starting phase. I mean, if I were to go back in time, I will just build a solid, profitable business from day one. Think about profitability from day one. Guys, right now, it's so hard to fundraise. It's so hard to beg for money. We are all begging. So it's called the art of begging, yeah? So it's become so hard, and we cannot sit there and think that it's going to be easier next year. It's going to be harder. So my advice to you is just start thinking about doing the hard job of building a profitable business. In Africa, we don't have so much time. We don't have so much luxury. Focus on the fundamentals of a solid business, a solid team, solid balance sheet, solid P&L.
She said parting shot, so all of you are speaking. The boss spoke, so I don't get to speak. So.
Yeah, I'll keep it short as well. I think one maybe alternative view to that is, I agree that right now it's probably a very hard time to raise, especially in Africa, for certain startups. But one thing I'll know is the money is there, it's just not going to everybody, right? So there is money that's being invested a lot, it's just shifting towards AI and different trends. And so I think one different way to approach it if you're having a hard time fundraising, especially seed rounds, is looking at, well, where is the money going and why is it going there? Two, learning how to sell better. What are your friends, your counterparts who are closing deals? How are they able to close the deals? And how are they able to drive urgency with those potential investors? Because the money is there, and you can build a profitable business, but that takes time, and sometimes you need the money today. And so I think two big takeaways, is learning where is the money going so you can sell your story better, and then two, connecting with other founders who are closing deals and learning what they did to enable that deal to close.
For me, so one is, as I said, for Blue Beetle, I'm looking for investors. So anybody here, I would like to meet them. And the second one is, if you are not using Little, please use that and support us. Thank you.